Welcome back. South Africa's poor literacy rate remains a long-standing concern. For years, the education sector has faced criticism over the sad state of education. But who should be held accountable? Well, to help answer that question, we're joined by Jonathan Molver, Director of Education Partnerships Group. A very good morning to you, Jonathan, and thank you so much for your time. So who's at fault here? Minister Motshekga and her predecessors, the government in general, teachers, parents? Who do we blame?
Morning. Thanks for hosting me this morning. So I think the first point I want to make this morning is that I don't believe anyone in particular is at fault. I think that if we're to correct the trajectory that our children are currently on, that it's going to require a collective effort. And the point that I've made in the piece in the Daily Maverick this week is that we're providing a lot of support for teachers, and despite the amount of support we're providing, could in fact do more to enable them to deliver the kind of education that I think our children deserve. But in the absence of any strong form of accountability, I think that support runs the risk of being wasted.
Are we acknowledging that teachers perhaps are not performing at optimum level because they too have grievances that are not being addressed by their employers? And I say employers, it's speaking specifically about the education department, that teaching started for them as a passion. They wanted to mold the minds of the young, but a passion can't feed you. A passion can't help pay for your bills. And they feel perhaps that they're not being paid enough for this passion that they have. So could we perhaps, at least acknowledge that they too have issues, and that's why they're not teaching as well as we would hope they do?
I think that may well be one of the reasons, and I think there are many reasons that contribute to teachers perhaps not performing optimally. Some of them may be salary grievances, others may be a lack of resources, others may be a shortage of support in school or from the department. And once again, just want to underscore that this isn't about pointing out or blaming. It's not a witch hunt. This is really about making the point that if teachers are going to support our children to learn effectively, they need a lot of support. But in setting the standard, we'll also need, I think, in the long term, to be held to account for their performance. And the critical point that I'm making in the piece this week is that while teachers are held accountable for a number of things by the department, the one thing that is missing and glaringly obvious is learner outcomes. Nowhere in the quality management standards are learner outcomes evident as an indicator that teachers are meant to be held accountable for.
Jonathan, do we have a quality curriculum? Are our kids, and I say our kids as if I'm that old, but are kids in South Africa being taught really well? Maths and science is a huge issue. We are still struggling in this country, with producing really good maths and science students. Are they being taught well, quality education?
So again, I think yes, I think we have a curriculum that covers all of the right areas and has levels of progression and standards which, if implemented correctly, could sufficiently educate our children and enable them to go on to university and gainful employment. I think that a lot of this has to do with what we're measuring. And so our focus often in classrooms is on measuring what's being taught as opposed to measuring what's actually being learned. And I'll come back to my original point. I think that if we're going to see a difference in learner outcomes over the long term, we need to focus on outcomes, and we need to focus on how much children are learning and what that's doing for their futures and their livelihoods.
We've obviously already highlighted remuneration grievances, resources perhaps not being enough or the right quality, but do we have quality teachers? Are they being, do teachers actually go and study the profession, or are they just being picked from, as it were, from the street and just being thrown into a classroom and we're hoping for the best? Are we getting teachers who have actually studied this craft?
Again, a mix, and to give one blanket answer would do a disservice to the profession and to the people currently working within the profession. I think there are those who would deem this a calling, a vocation, and who have studied and worked hard to enter the profession. Many find it, upon entering the profession, incredibly difficult to stay because of a lack of support, because of challenging circumstances, because of a shortage of resources, and so end up leaving the profession very early on. And something that we'll be looking at, I think, in the near future, and it's already being well publicized, is the significant shortage, not just in the number of teachers, but also in the quality of teachers, given standards at university, and obviously, I think more importantly, the fact that many of our workforce in the teaching sector have suffered at the hands of a less than adequate primary or basic education themselves. This is a critical hurdle that we need to overcome collectively, and we need to support and enable our teachers to deliver quality education as a collective.
And just very quickly, before I let you go, Jonathan, can we get it right? I mean, we're highlighting all of the issues we have, but can this be resolved? Can South African education get to the level everyone desires it to?
So I think if we focus on the most important thing, which is children learning, and if we can rally the troops, if we can get public, private sector working together to focus on delivering quality education outcomes for all, that we can chip away at this a little bit at a time, and over time we can correct the course, and we can ensure that every child in South Africa has the opportunity to access a quality education.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us here on the South African Morning. That is the Director of Education Partnerships Group, Jonathan Molver.